Welcome to The Explainer. Today, we're stepping right into one of the most intense psychological thrillers in human history to examine the true fragility of trust. We're diving deep into the heart of Shakespeare's tragedy of Julius Caesar. But, we aren't just looking at the assassination of a ruler today. We're actually looking at the complete collapse of trust itself. I mean, think about the sheer scale of the Roman Empire at this time. We're talking about a civilization that spanned millions of square miles, literally stretching all the way from the deserts of Africa to the deep forests of Britannia. Today, we're analyzing exactly how a power of that unimaginable magnitude just crumbled. Rome was not destroyed by an enemy. Now, that is a profound realization. The collapse of this magnificent, globe-spanning power didn't come from some invading army or a massive external force. Rome's military dominance was, for all intents and purposes, completely untouchable. Nobody from the outside could break those gates. Instead, the undoing of the Republic came entirely from within. It was an implosion, driven by internal paranoia, raw ambition, and ultimately, the absolute deepest kind of betrayal. And that brings us to the most disturbing question of this entire explainer. Was Caesar a tyrant who actually deserved to die? Or was Rome destroyed by the very people who claimed they were saving it? It's absolutely fascinating because even today, historians and scholars remain totally divided on this exact question. So keep this provocative thought right in the back of your mind as we go forward. We're going to reframe this historical assassination as a modern psychological puzzle. All right, let's dive into this. Chapter 1, The Rise of Fear. Okay, to really understand this collapse, we've got to set the scene. We're looking at a society that is incredibly powerful, yet highly, highly unstable. And at the absolute center of this volatile mix stands one guy, Julius Caesar. Now, Caesar's status was a real paradox. Out in the streets, he was loved by the people. The guy was victorious in war, showered in adoration, and his political influence was practically untouchable, a true populist hero. But within the echoing walls of the Senate, that exact same popularity bred a paralyzing, suffocating terror among the elite. The more the common citizens cheered for him, the more the senators panicked in private. You see, power in Rome wasn't just political. It was entirely in the mind. The Senate starts to buy into this single terrifying idea. If Caesar becomes king, Rome will die. They became obsessed with whispered rumors that Caesar was going to start wearing a literal crown, or worse, that he was beginning to act and be treated like a living god. So here's the crucial twist you have to understand. The Senate is not reacting to what Caesar has actually done. Their panic isn't based on some enacted policy or an abused law. No, they're reacting purely to a projected fear of the future, of what they think he might become. Chapter 2, The Psychology of Betrayal. This is exactly where we meet Marcus Junius Brutus. And Brutus is a man driven not by hate, but by a profoundly dangerous sense of conviction. Cassius, who's the lead conspirator here, lays a trap for Brutus with a perfectly targeted idea. He tells him, Caesar is dangerous. You are Rome's last hope. It's brilliant. Cassius completely weaponizes Brutus's love for his country. He reminds Brutus of his family legacy, the fact that his own ancestor famously overthrew the last of the ancient Roman kings centuries ago. Cassius makes the manipulation absolutely irresistible, laying down this perfectly crafted moral trap. So Brutus isn't sitting there choosing between good and evil. He's forced to choose between friendship and duty. And wow, this is just an agonizing internal conflict. Caesar is his close friend. He's his mentor, someone who has shown him grace and elevated him. But his duty to the Republic demands that no single man hold absolute power. Brutus's betrayal is the most dangerous kind imaginable because, well, in his own mind, it feels completely morally correct. He's sacrificing his dearest friend on the altar of what he wholeheartedly believes is his civic duty. And that right there is the true tragedy. Chapter 3, The Emotional Collapse. The theoretical fears we just talked about are about to become a very bloody reality. The timeline here is rapid and, quite frankly, terrifying. Minute 1, the Senate gathers. You can imagine the tension in that room is just thick, suffocating. Minute 3, Caesar enters, takes his place, and one by one, the conspirators surround him under the guise of presenting a petition, physically closing him in. And then, minute 4, the stabbing. It's just a complete frenzy of violence. Now, here's a pretty surprising historical fact. History tells us Caesar was stabbed 23 times, but autopsies of the era actually suggest only one of those wounds was fatal. The rest of the strikes, they were pure, chaotic panic as the senators blindly slashed at him, totally driven by adrenaline and terror. The procedural dread just peaks in this massive frenzy, until the exact moment Caesar's eyes finally meet Brutus's. And then he speaks the most famous line in history. "You too, Brutus?" In this split second, the event is no longer political. It's a total emotional collapse. Caesar actually doesn't die from the violence first. He dies from disbelief. The sheer, devastating shock of seeing his trusted friend's blade is the real fatal blow to his spirit. He pulls his toga over his face, and finally he surrenders to the inevitable. Chapter 4: Words that Destroyed Rome. So the deed is done. The assassins actually think they've saved the Republic. But a new figure steps forward, and the immediate aftermath changes the course of history forever. Enter Mark Antony. Instead of throwing out direct accusations, Antony executes this masterful, almost terrifying persuasion strategy. He appeals directly to raw, unbridled emotion. He uses ironic repetition. He physically reveals Caesar's bloody, torn cloak to the masses, showing them the violence firsthand. And all the while, he reminds them of their slain leader's incredible kindness and generosity to the public. He methodically weaponizes the crowd's emotions, and he does it without ever once making a direct attack against the conspirators. The absolute linchpin of his entire rhetorical strategy is this exact phrase: "Brutus is an honorable man." He repeats it over and over and over again. And this repetition is a genius trap. By superficially agreeing with the conspirators, Antony completely bypasses the crowd's natural defenses. With every single repetition, the phrase grows increasingly ironic. It acts like a slow poison. It creates this massive cognitive dissonance in the minds of the citizens, turning completely sour in their ears, until they are whipped into an absolute frenzy against the very men they were cheering for just moments before. Which leads us to perhaps the most important psychological lesson of this whole explainer. People do not respond to truth. They respond to persuasion. It is a chilling testament to the power of language over facts. The crowd genuinely does not care about the Senate's high-minded political justifications, the rule of law, or any fancy theories of Republican government. Nope, they are moved entirely by the emotional, visceral narrative that Mark Antony has spun. Chapter 5: The Collapse of Control. That spark of persuasion, it ignites absolute devastation. Rome fundamentally shifts from a society governed by law to a society governed by emotion. And the immediate fallout is catastrophic. Order just completely disappears. The structured society of rules is replaced overnight by an angry, violent mob. Historically, this is the literal moment where the city burns. Houses are set on fire, innocent citizens are fleeing for their lives, and the political system completely unravels into mob justice. And right here is Shakespeare's ultimate warning to us. A society doesn't collapse simply when its leaders are weak. It collapses when perception completely replaces reality. When the shared sense of what is true shatters, the foundation of the entire society crumbles right along with it. The great irony here, the ultimate tragedy, is that the conspirators' singular goal was to save the Republic, but their actions and the ensuing chaos yielded the exact opposite result, guaranteeing the permanent death of the Republic and ushering in the rise of the Roman Empire. So why does all this matter to us today? Why are we studying ancient Rome through a psychological lens? Well, because human nature hasn't changed. Fear still creates enemies out of thin air. Language still controls crowds just as effectively as it did in the Roman Forum. I mean, think about modern social media algorithms. They thrive on the exact same emotional manipulation, the same outrage and irony that Mark Antony used to burn down a city over 2,000 years ago. And tragically, because of our own blind conviction, we can still destroy the very things we are desperately trying to protect. I want to leave you with this final, lingering thought. Was Rome saved from tyranny, or was it destroyed by those who feared it too much? It's a huge question without an easy answer, but it's one that really forces us to examine our own motives. I want you to reflect on that and on the extreme dangers of unchecked conviction. Thank you so much for joining me on this explainer. Keep questioning the narrative and keep learning.